The reason why I got involved in non-proliferation, counter-proliferation, weapons intelligence, counterterrorism, covert operations, international affairs, national, international law enforcement after 9/11, because, first of all, my parents were both in the military. My dad was never around, so I don't really give a shit about that. But in terms of my mother and my grandparents, my aunts and my uncles, my great aunts, that is, and my uncles and others in my family, they all served in the U.S. military. So I knew at some point that I would be working in government, doing something in defense as a civilian contractor. I flirted with the idea of joining the military in high school, went and talked to some recruiters, and the big recruitment drive at the time was for the Gulf War, Persian Gulf War. And so I wasn't really interested in going to Iraq at the time to fight Saddam Hussein in the oil war. That's my opinion. That was my opinion then, and that's my opinion now. I definitely commend and applaud anyone who signed up for the U.S. military and who did serve in any capacity, fighting tyrants, tyranny, terrorists, dictators, madmen, crazy, nihilist, despotic fools, anyone who's anti-America, anti-our allies, anyone who's a rogue regime, just dangerous operators worldwide, terrorists. Leading up to and after 9/11, I saw a trend in America, even in high school, with regard to gang violence, crime, corruption just not on the streets, but corruption in our own government. And looking back at J. Edgar Hoover and the crimes that he committed against the United States with COINTELPRO and everything that happened, elapsed, transpired in that regard. And then, of course, civil rights movement, the civil rights movement in America, and all of the civil strife and unrest that took place during the 1960s and after. And then, of course, World War I, World War II, and everything that went with that in relation to global conflict, war. My uncles were in the Korean War. I have cousins who are adoptees, Korean American adoptees, and they're adults. They're older than me. And so my uncles having been in the Korean War, my dad in the Vietnam War, my grandparents, my grandmother and grandfather in World War II, coming from a long line of war fighters, my mother and father, my mom and dad. I don't like to call my dad my father because he's not really my father, but my dad, my mom and my dad in the military, my grandmother and grandfather in the military, my uncles and great aunts in the military, and people we know, friends of our family who served in the U.S. military. I had to do something to honor my family. So I knew that I would get involved in and with government sometime shortly after high school. So I did. I took as many courses as I could that related to government, defense, security studies. I enrolled in a program through American Military University, and that particular program was security studies, counterintelligence, counterespionage, courses that weren't really available before 9/11. There were some schools, but increasingly so after 9/11, courses were made available to the general public along the lines of counterterrorism, counterintelligence, counterespionage, and the like. So I got involved when I could after some years of having been in business management, electronics engineering, computer information systems, information technology, getting some IT and computers and business under my belt. I knew that it was time to make that leap, transition into a security-related field. And so, of course, I had to get a waiver to work in government because coming from gang life, gang culture, having been on the streets, lived on the streets, been part of gang life, the gang life and gang culture for 15 years approximately, since the age of roughly 14 forward. So 14 plus 15, 29, early 30s. I was still immersed in the world of gangs on the West Coast, in and out of college, taking a course here and there. I knew that the gang life was limited and that there's no future in it, really. I mean, you can have pride in your neighborhood and you can fly your colors, but it's not like you get a pension. It's not like you can retire from the world of gangs and the underworld. So I knew that I had to honor my family name, and that I needed to go back to school full time, and I needed to get credentialed, certified, and I needed to get a job in government. So I did. I have been in 25 states, out of country as an adult on my own, and I took out federal student loans. I worked full time while in school. So I was one of those students who I worked full time, double shifts, and went to school. Sometimes I had A grades, sometimes I failed courses, and sometimes I barely skated by, and sometimes my grades were average. See, unlike former Hussein Barack Obama, I don't hide my academic background. I just told you what my academic background is, and I was very frank and upfront about it. There's no shame in my game, and that being said, nonetheless, I was still a college university honor student, and that's on my permanent transcripts, my permanent college university transcripts, that I am and always will and forever be, because it's permanent, a college honor student. I can take courses at any university, and if I fail 5, 10 courses just because I do, if I'm like, okay, I'm going to take this course, pay for it, but I have no intentions of completing it or doing any type of satisfactory work, I don't know why someone would do that. But if I did that, I'm still a college honor student. My college honors are on my permanent college university transcripts. So I demonstrated that I can take college university courses, that I can be a college honor student, university honor student, college university honor student whenever I feel like it, whenever I want to excel. I demonstrated that. Also, when I was at American Military University and I took courses in counter-espionage, counterintelligence, for those particular courses, I received a grade of A. That's A grade, like before the letter B, like A is an alpha. So 4.0 A grade in counter-espionage, which is counterintelligence essentially. That's American Military University. And I took other courses through other colleges, universities, cybersecurity, cyber defense, cyber countermeasures, electronics engineering. My electronics engineering course, my overall GPA at that particular college was 3.4. So I have grades that are transferable to different colleges and universities. I took Arabic, barely skated by, but I completed the course so that if I want to in the future, I can take Arabic too. But I already took Arabic too on my own outside the classroom. I already took Arabic. I used software, and I took Arabic in school formally in the classroom as well. And like I said, I barely skated by because I wasn't in class for 50% of the time. I was at Walter Reed Army Institute of Research for a summer because they paid me thousands of dollars to be in a program where they kept me awake for 6 days and then watched how I recovered after I stayed awake for 6 days. They watched how I recovered for 7 days. So I stayed awake for 6 days. I wasn't in class at the time. They paid me thousands of dollars. I invested that money in my own government contracting entity that I own and operate as just me, just my name. And I provide a service directly to the U.S. government, U.S. intelligence community for which I've been paid cash. So that being said, I invested in my enterprise as a U.S. intelligence contractor. I took the money that I earned working a summer as a human test subject in an experiment at Walter Reed Army Institute of Research for Battle Space. Took that money. I was like, okay, well, I'm in school right now, and ordinarily I'd be in the classroom, but you know what? I'm getting paid thousands of dollars for a DoD battle space program, project experiment. They want to keep me awake for 6 days. They say I qualify. I passed all the psychological evaluations. I passed the physical evals with flying colors. So they said I qualified. And so I had that opportunity, and I took advantage of that opportunity. And I took that money, thousands of dollars, and I invested it in my defense contracting entity, which is me, my name, DBA. It's just me and my name. I provide a service directly to the U.S. intelligence community. I don't go through third parties. I operated a contract that was an SAIC contract. I don't fuck with SAIC, man. Fuck SAIC. So, at any rate, that was a long time ago when I worked at Andrews Air Force Base and Bowling Air Force Base before I moved my operation up the coast to New York. I already had business in New York, but I moved the business entirely up the coast. Nonetheless, some over a decade ago, I had been at Walter Reed Army Institute of Research, WRAIR. That's not the hospital. That's the research facility for the U.S. Army and other agencies. So I was there. I was at Bowling Air Force Base, and I was at Andrews Air Force Base. That's on my permanent resume. Can't be taken away from me. All of that's on my resume. The fact that I've worked at U.S. military installations and I've been paid for my work. Now let me say this. I'm a rational operator. People say crazy, stupid shit, and they're fucking idiots. They're morons. They don't know a fraction of the shit that they claim that they know or that they think that they know. So I've worked at U.S. military government installations. I've worked at the Department of Defense. I've worked at different agencies that I won't mention on record here. I've worked at those agencies as a U.S. intelligence contractor. I have no background in terms of psychiatric issues or mental illnesses or any of the aforementioned. I don't have anything like that. I've never been mentally ill. I've never been someone who's a loose cannon. I'm not a psych case. I don't have any issues of psychiatric issues, psychological issues, and I've passed every psychological evaluation time and time again my entire lifetime with flying colors. So anyone who thinks that I'm crazy and delusional is a crazy and delusional piece of fucking shit, that person's self. Those people are fucking idiots. My resume is stellar. It's actually absolutely fabulous and fantastic. I've worked at DoD facilities installations. I've worked at other U.S. intelligence community agency locations, installations, and I've always been paid for my work. U.S. government doesn't pay crazy people. U.S. government doesn't pay delusional and crazy people. And I've worked on many different contracts, many operations, many undercover covert operations, including counterterrorism. That's right. It's on my permanent resume. Can't be taken from me. U.S. government paid me, and I carried out those operations successfully. And I know how to keep my mouth shut, and I know how to keep secrets, and the U.S. intelligence community knows that. I'm one Sir Grove. I also work in show business. That's right. So, let's talk about 9/11. 9/11 scared a lot of people. I have relatives, friends, people I know. 9/11 was a dark time for America. It was a dark period of time for America. I was back on the West Coast, and someone called me and said, Grove, turn on the TV, turn on the TV. And I said, the TV's already on. They called me early in the morning. It was still dark out. They said, Grove, are you watching TV? Are you watching TV? Turn on the TV. I said, look, man, I just told you the fucking TV's on. I've had it on all night. They said, what channel? Go to the news. And I said, man, I can already see it. What is it? Because I kind of drifted off. And then I came to and I saw this computer model of this plane. And this person on the phone was telling me, this person I worked with in IT when I became a U.S. defense contractor back on the West Coast in Bellevue, Washington. That's right, Bellevue, Washington, where the group, the band, the musical group, Queensryche is from, that Bellevue, Washington. Bravo, Echo, Lima, Echo, Victor, Uniform, Echo, Bellevue. So I had been working with the team of IT gurus, IT experts, and we had different clients around and throughout the Pacific Northwest. So I would go around with my crew of IT guys, and we would work on projects, networks, home-based, business, office-based, the whole nine. The full gamut. People who were Mac professionals, people who were IBM professionals. If we knew of a job that could be done, we'd put in a bid, we'd get the contract, we'd go and do it. We did work at the Swedish hospital in Seattle, work out in Ballard, work in Seattle, Bellevue, work all around the region. So one of the guys I worked with, he was hysterical, and he's talking at a frantic breakneck pace, and he's saying, are you what? And I said, man, I told you, bro, I'm on it. Like, what's up? And he's like, do you see what's going on? They did it. They finally did it. They did it, man. They took out New York. Man. It's over, Grove. It's over, man. It's the end of the world. They fucking nuked New York. And I'm thinking to myself, man, the hairs on my arms are standing up right now. And I'm thinking to myself, man, what is he talking about? How could they have done this? And all I'm seeing is this computer model of this plane, and I turn up the volume, right? And my body went cold, man, and I'm thinking to myself, man, what the fuck? They nuked New York. It's the end of the world. It's Armageddon. What the fuck? How is the TV still on? How is there a dial tone on the phone? Because back then there were landline phones. There were phones that were still landlines with the dial tone. So I'm thinking to myself, man, what he's telling me seems inconsistent and incongruent with what I know. Like, if there's a nuclear war, there's a really good chance all circuits are going to be busy and the phones are just going to be not even operable, right? So, and the television. And I don't hear any horns blaring or any sirens or people running through the streets saying, it's the end, Armageddon, it's the end of the world. And I don't see anything in the atmosphere suggesting that that's the case. So, but he's on the phone telling me that it is the end and it's over and that they nuked New York. So then I'm thinking, well, how did they get nukes on board the planes? How did they get the nukes or how did the nukes detonate? Or what do they use? What type of nuclear devices are we talking about? What are they showing us the planes for? Were there nukes on planes? How are they even showing a reenactment of what took place? I was confused. I quickly realized, surmised, deduced, inferred that he didn't have a full picture and full understanding, comprehension of what had taken place and what was going on. Nonetheless, it was dark. It was a very extremely dark time in America. I talked to people in my family who had been in the military and posted abroad overseas for considerable lengths of time, considerable military service, extensive, and I asked those individuals for their opinions and wanted for them to shed some light on the situation in terms of what they thought had taken place, was taking place, and what they thought the outcome ultimately would be. And they said that they didn't think that it was the end of the world, but that it was definitely a dark time, and an incredibly, extremely dark time for America, and that it would take some considerable length of time for America to recover. And I don't know that America has fully recovered. It was at that time that I told myself, it's time, man. It's time for me to make a beeline for the U.S. government. This can never happen again. That's how I got fully involved, fully entrenched in work with the U.S. intelligence community. That's when I hired an attorney who specializes in national security background investigations. That's when I made a beeline for the East Coast. And I said, man, fuck this shit, man. I'm going to do my small part to ensure that this never happens again. And I'm going to go up against each and every one of these motherfuckers that my government allows for me to go up against, man. No holds barred.